Coming up on our first episode.
Brought guitars, knocked down 50 tacos and a keg of beer, and blah, 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 blah. Aliens killed Elvis.
And then joined the world of cybersecurity.
I mean, like, my whole value is this, right? Just
these mitigation steps are always useful.
But it was a hell of a time.
And welcome one and all to the first production of the Pacific Northwest Cyber Collective. I'm your host, John Lou Peck, your friendly wannabe hacker with a face for radio and a voice for writing books, here to say hello to all you cyber defenders of the digital frontier. Today's show is coming to you from the Seattle-based Pacific Northwest Cyber Collective, and here's what we have for you. First up is Story Time, our salute to Kirk Bailey and the security community formerly known as Agora. Then we have an interview with Mike Hamilton, former CISO for the City of Seattle, founder of Critical Insight and now part of Lumify Cyber, and founder of the Pisces program. We also have our first edition of Vulnerababble, our discussion of hot vulnerabilities in the news. So let's jump into our first topic. Who are we? Where are we going? What are we doing here? The Pacific Northwest Cyber Collective, or PNWCC for short, is a loose-knit group of people and organizations that have anything to do with the cybers. If you work in cybersecurity, if you're studying cybersecurity because you want to work in cybersecurity, if you're a researcher, or if you're a business owner just wondering what it's all about, we're here for you. Our goal with this group and this program is to build a community of practitioners, researchers, experts, and anyone who's curious to collaborate, share resources, send information, business leads, cool training, ask for help, go to meetups and get-togethers, share work opportunities, whatever you've got. Cybersecurity as an industry is going through a shift, a transformation. Our hope at the PNW Cyber Collective is that we can build a place where we can all work together towards a greater good, whatever that may look like. So where did this whole thing come from? Well, back in the day, there was this group called the Agora, started in the 90s by Kirk Bailey and some of his colleagues who worked in IT and security. They used to get together in an IT room or a data center somewhere and just work on stuff. They would talk shop, tinker on projects, watch cheesy hacker movies, maybe some of my favorite hacker movies. So they have their little secret server room society for a few years, but then over time, word starts to get out. Things start to take off. More and more people start coming, so they have to start holding bigger gatherings. Eventually, they're so big, they have to start using university lecture halls, conference center ballrooms, Seattle's town hall stage. Hundreds of people were coming to these meetings on one Friday morning every quarter, and it wasn't just Seattle locals. I knew of people flying in from the East Coast, from Washington, D.C., New York, Toronto. They would come just to hear the presentations and to meet with the community. And these presentations were never recorded. They were never transcribed and published. They were rarely documented at all. But there was amazing research being presented. Stories of investigators catching bad actors, of researchers making technology do amazing and concerning things, discussions about digital privacy. And in its later years, because they talked about government-related stuff, like when the Snowden leaks about PRISM happened, they had a registered guest list, and they would offer up warnings like, hey, we're going to talk about publicly sourced info, but it's about classified stuff. So if that's something your job is touchy about, maybe you should go take a coffee break. And then a bunch of the government and defense people who were in the audience would get up and leave the room. It did a fantastic job of being a group available to all and with something for everybody. But then in 2019, Kirk Bailey retired from his role as the CISO of the University of Washington, and the group shut down. We had one final meeting at the university. It was very bittersweet because all the folks in the room knew what an amazing thing it was that was winding down. And while I'm very happy for Kirk, and I hope that he has retired to a nice sunny island somewhere because that man earned it, but ever since that last meeting, I've felt a void, this hole in the cyber community. And so we've started the Pacific Northwest Cyber Collective. Now, to be clear, our goal is not to be Agora 2.0 or to do things the way that they did it. Agora was lightning in a 30 years old bottle, a bit of magic in an otherwise very dull and technical world. But the world is different now. We've gone through the pandemic and remote work and return to office, some of us multiple times. We're taking in media and content differently, and now we're witnessing a massive landscape shift in the federal government and the cyber workforce. Cybercrime today can be perpetrated by teenagers from their phones at the skate park, not just hoodied hackers chained to T3 lines. And for those of you born after the year 2000, a T3 used to be the right-quick internet hookup, the GigaChad for moving your gigabits, as it were. In this new era, Our goal is to be a new community picking up where Agora left off. A community that is in addition to your local meetups and chapters and industry groups, not instead of. So please tell your friends and colleagues, forward our channel to anyone you think will be interested, like and subscribe, and be sure to join us next month for our second episode. And that brings us to our interview with our first guest, Mike Hamilton. Welcome to the show, Mr. Michael Hamilton. How are you doing today, sir?
Kind of crazy. Thanks for asking. It's been a hell of a couple of days. My birthday was last week, right?
Happy birthday.
Turned 65, right? So it's really weird time to be signing up for Social Security and Medicare, but what I decided to do for my 65th birthday was to bring a bunch of people down into my music studio, play a set with my band, and then jam with other musicians that brought guitars, knock down 50 tacos and a keg of beer and other alcohol I'm not even going to explain, which is still down there, which is kind of dangerous. But it was a hell of a time. And so now I'm getting back into the swing of things, getting ready for conferences. And, like my whole value is this, right? Just what I say. So I did a PR request this morning and I got an interview tomorrow, blah, 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 blah.
Sounds like fun.
That's all right.
Well, assuming your hangover has cleared up, let's talk a little bit about the Pisces pricing project.
Last night was band practice, and I'm not going to go into this, but
yeah, understood. Yeah. Well, so let's dive into the Pisces project. We've heard rumor about this project that's been going around for a number of years. You've been working for a number of years to get it out and into various colleges and schools. Tell us about the program. What does it do?
So you probably heard of the term MSSP, Managed Security Service Provider, MDR, Managed Detection and Response. That's kind of what Pisces does. So first of all, Pisces stands for Public Infrastructure Security Cyber Education System. Okay. And this started in 2010, 9, something like that. And so I had been the managing consultant for VeriSign Global Security. Okay. And in that role, I lived in hotels, went to work on airplanes, drove rental cars, ate in restaurants, and VeriSign drove a dump truck full of money to my house every 2 weeks. Right. So, okay. That's not a healthy lifestyle. Like, you younger people, go do that. Right. But it can't last forever. So, and then when my daughter was born, and so my daughter is born, and it's like, well, if I'm going to be dad, I can't really go to work on an airplane anymore. That's not going to work. So I quit VeriSign the day after getting a $52,000 bonus, and took the job at the city of Seattle as the CISO. And so I did that for about 8 years. But when I got there, right, so I'd been working for these companies that just do all this monitoring, right? We monitor networks. We kick the bad guys out. We put out the grease fire on the stove before the house burns down, right? So we were doing that. And I got to local government, right? The city of Seattle. And I start meeting all the other people from all the other cities because I go to this conference called ACES, the Association of County and City Information Systems. And I'm like they're buying antivirus and firewalls and calling it good, right? I'm going, well, that's not good, man. You can try to prevent all this stuff you can, but you're not going to fend off these people. So you need to monitor your network and be able to detect when your preventive controls have failed. So, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I had a mentor there. Her name was Vicki Wills. And she said, look, I'm the black belt at how to get grant money. Why don't we talk about this? And it took a couple of bites at that apple, but we finally got some grant money from Homeland Security, from a division they call S&T, Science and Technology. And they said, okay, this sounds like a good project. So what I wanted to do was set up a regional monitoring project. So for free, we wanted to monitor cities, counties, and ports on Puget Sound. So at one point, we were monitoring 9 cities and counties, 6 ports on Puget Sound, Seattle Children's Hospital, Snohomish PUD, Seattle City Light, right? So we got energy in there, we got healthcare in there, we got, maritime in there, right? Transportation sector and shipping, things like that. plus all the critical infrastructure that's in local government, right? That's like flushing toilets and drinking water and stuff like that you really need, right? So we're doing that. Is like all this information is on one pane of glass, and we can see if Snohomish PUD goes red, maybe they need a phone call and some help. But there was no analysts working on this. It was just like IDS alerts blowing off and turning the thing red, right? So, okay, well, who's going to be the analyst? And so what we wanted to do was bolt it onto the educational system and teach people to be analysts with all of this live fire. And so I got hired as I left the city of Seattle. I got hired as and started the company actually. Got hired as a policy advisor to Washington State, specifically because Washington State wanted to put their fingerprints on this thing, right? Well, when you work with an institution as large as state government, and they're trying to pair you with an institution as large as the University of Washington, that's not going to work, right? That takes years to work out. So like multiple bites at this apple, and we did things like help to work on the state's comprehensive emergency management plan. There was an annex for significant cyber disruption. We said that this project was called PRISM at the time before Ed Snowden rolled over on the NSA, and everybody got like
that
okay.
word took a new meaning.
Like the branding was terrible at that point. But finally, I met the partner I needed, Steve Stein, who was then retired from PNL, Pacific Northwest National Lab, and really knows how to pull the levers of government. And Steve and I shopped this around and finally found Western Washington University, who agreed to be our lead school. So they helped develop curriculum. They run a cyber range that helps students log into all their facilities there, right? So you can go like hack computers, you can detonate malware, you can all kinds of stuff, right? And we said, let's put this stuff, the Pisces stuff in there. So we put a monitoring stack in their cyber range. Western became our lead school. The curriculum then started to get distributed around to other schools. And now, today, we monitor close to 30 jurisdictions in Washington State. We pull metadata, no content, so it's source address, destination address, port, protocol flags, timestamp size, blah, 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 all that stuff, and throw it in a monitoring stack. And 15 universities and colleges now teach all the same curriculum, how to be a cyber analyst by being a cyber analyst with live fire. Wow. And this role, cyber analyst, is the 5th fastest growing job in the country. 2 years ago, it was the 10th. So it's clear what kind of people we need to make, right? The butts in seats that we need. So that's what I do. I put butts in seats.
All right. Well, so let's say if I'm a college student and I'm interested in the program, how can I get signed up? Or if it's not at my school, how can I bring it to my school?
So interesting question, really. So Pisces is a couple of classes, soon to be 3, that are embedded in existing cyber programs. Okay, so like all the schools have cyber programs. And so if they want to do this, we hand them the curriculum. I mean, it's like easy to sign a school up, right? Hey, you're going to give us a curriculum. You're going to give us access to the data. You're going to handle all the credentialing. Hey, man, we're totally in. Okay.
That sounds pretty turnkey.
It sounds pretty turnkey. It turns out that the heaviest lift there is getting the instructor to be able to teach the curriculum, because they are really kind of not in this loop either. Okay. So you got to be in one of those schools. But what we have done is we have extracted a data set. So we only keep 90 days worth of data, right? It's only metadata. We could lose it all. Nobody would know anything, right? I mean, this is of no value. But we only keep 90 days of that data. So what we did was we extracted 90 days of data from a single Washington city that I won't name and anonymized it. So if a school wants to teach the curriculum, but they don't want the live fire, because the live fire means we need an agreement with the state at the state government level. If we reach a certain footprint in your state, certain number of communities being monitored, certain number of educational institutions teaching the curriculum, state, you have to take over operations and maintenance funding. Well, so a lot of schools go, hey, we want to do this. We don't really have that conversation going on with the state, and I don't know if we can do that. So we have this canned data set that we can give them for that. We also have a canned data set that we use for K-12. So there's lots of high schools actually using our data to teach high school students, middle school students, how to search for events going on that they need to investigate, what the investigation process is like, right? So that's really the way to get into the program. You need to be in a school where they teach the curriculum, or convince your school to take this data set and build a curriculum around that.
Okay. For an ambitious student, is that something that takes like maybe a quarter or two, or is that a years long journey?
Well, it's a years long. So interesting question. It's a years long journey if you're in one of these bachelor programs, right? That this is going to be. So there's an analyst class, there's a SOC operations class, and the one that's coming that's recently been developed by PNL is operational technology security monitoring. Okay.
Hey.
So, and we're moving to this other platform. It's called Malcolm. And if you go to malcolm.fyi, you can read all about this. But Homeland Security is seriously interested in having us put that in public utilities. Department of Energy went to PNL and said, hey, we'd like to get this thing going in dam operations. And interestingly, I presented at a NATO education conference a few weeks ago. And so it looks like we're going to deploy in, and I'm not making this up, North Macedonia and Serbia. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So did I answer your question? Because I think I just went off on a tangent there.
I think so, but let's take it and make it a part two. Let's say I want to bring the program into my school. Is that something that's likely to happen? Like, we're coming up on August, and I'm assuming classes are going to be starting for most folks in September or thereabouts. Is that something that can happen inside of a month or two, or is that something where they start having the conversation now? Maybe it's going to be ready in a year or two.
Right. So good question. If they have an existing cyber program, they can make this a component of it without adding a class to the course catalog for the school. Eventually, they need to add a class for the course catalog for the school, because this needs to be a standalone class, not a component of something else. Other schools teach it as an internship or a capstone project, which that's cool too. And when students, so like SOC operations, right? So Pisces will throw in IDS alerts, and students go through those and go, oh, this one looks real. And they'll investigate that, and they will then escalate it to our oversight analysts, right? We have professional analysts that work with the students, give them feedback on their tickets. It's like, dude, 192, 168, 1.12 is irrelevant. All right. We got to tell students that at the first part of every quarter. But when they have done enough of these tickets and they've kind of met the bar, they are given the Pisces certificate, which is recognized by Homeland Security. And again, we got this developed with PNL, and that means you have operational experience with real-time events in critical infrastructure. Okay. So as a differentiator, you're trying to get an entry-level job. You're trying to get your foot in the door, right? So, like, first of all, if the thing that's being hired most is cyber analyst, that's a job you want. That's the one they hire the most, right? And honestly, if you want that job, you go to the companies that hire the most of those people, which are MSSPs, right? Managed detection and response, right? The people that do SOC as a service. So, that is the way to, like I say, it could be a capstone project. It could be an internship. It could be a course. It takes a while to get the course embedded in the curriculum, right? Because you got to go through all of this faculty evaluation, confirmation, put it in the course catalog and all this stuff. And that can take a long time. And that's why we couldn't work with UW. That was going to take them years, right? But I mean, there's schools that have pulled the trigger fairly quickly on this. And so I'll go through the schools, because I'm assuming here most of these people are in Washington State, and maybe I can remember them all. And I'm sorry, I'm burping because I've been drinking beer.
It wouldn't be cyber without beer.
Yeah, right. Well, you know me. So it's Western Washington University, Central Washington University, Eastern Washington University, Spokane Falls Community College, Green River College, Highline College, Evergreen College. What's the there's a couple I can't remember. They're teaching it at Whatcom, and I think they are teaching it at Edmonds. I think in Washington State there are 12. So, and I know I haven't hit 12, but it's also University of Montana and soon to be a couple of other schools in Montana because that's an expansion state. We monitor, like I said, about 30 jurisdictions in Washington State. Also in Kentucky, we're monitoring some local governments and some rural healthcare, and along with Montana. And then there's a county in Idaho that we monitor. And so you've got like plenty of signal being generated by all this for the students to actually find stuff. Our next expansion state is Hawaii. So bummer, I'm going to have to go there and talk to them.
What a shame. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
on-site
it's a
meetings.
shame. Yeah. But New York had us in the governor's budget, right? It was
kidding.
It was aligned by the governor. And then all the federal stuff happened and all the funding got pulled and all that. Yeah. So they pulled out everything that was discretionary. But we think we're going to go back and do New York too. Now, the reason this is interesting is because there is a program called Scholarship for Service, okay, SFS. And that's been around for a long time. And it's all of the Centers for Academic Excellence as designated by the NSA can have an SFS program. What it means is the federal government will pay for 4 years of tuition in return for 4 years of service in a cyber role, okay? But as we've all gone through this process together, what they're finding is your degree doesn't mean as much as your skills, right? So like I'm OG, right? There's no thing as a cyber education. I mean, we had to do illegal stuff to learn this, right? I tell students all the time, look, you can get your degree in cybersecurity now. If you get your pedigree the way I got mine, you're going to go to prison. Right? And we can talk about some of those stories if you want. But so what they're doing is to convert this to more of a skills thing where, no, we don't need a CISSP and 5 years of experience to give you this entry-level position. That's all bullshit, right?
Right.
So now they know this. So what they're going to do, and there's an act in front of Congress, it's called the Pivot Act with 2 T's, PIVOTT. And what they're going to do is they're going to move the SFS program to community colleges and treat it more like trade school because we need analysts. We need eyes on AI, okay, is changing that, coloring that, but we still need eyes on, right? You can't have unsupervised AI making decisions that I'm going to quarantine this asset in a hospital, okay?
Right.
And somebody dies, right? So you got to have humans on this. So SFS program for community colleges means that this thing scales across the country. And so, we're working on communications to National Governors Association, Western Governors Association, National Association of State Legislators, and NASIO, the National Association of State CIOs, to say, look, as part of your all-of-state strategy to comply with the executive order that says you are now responsible for infrastructure protection, here's a good thing. And it's all packaged. It's ready to go, right? You don't have to invent this. So, we can talk about the technology behind it if you want, but that's kind of like where this is going educationally and how to get into it. I hope that was a good enough exposition there. And I put in the Pisces URL there to the Pisces website if anybody wants to know more about this.
We'll make sure that.
And so one of the questions here, so let's look at some of these questions. So audio is great. Okay, that's good.
There was one asking, what were some of the challenges you had in setting up the program?
Oh, fuck. So first of all, you're not going to do anything significant if you don't persist. Okay, this thing tried to die 12 times. I don't know. So, I mean, in one form or another, it's been around since kind of 2011. So, I mean, we're coming to 15 years for, taking bites at this apple, and you just got to keep going back. You got to work with the state, that was probably the biggest challenge. But then it's the dependence on federal money right? So we were getting DHS grants, right? Back then there was no CISA. It was called NPPD, the National Programs Protectorate Division, or the National Protectorate Programs, whatever that is. And working with them, and one of their divisions was S&T, Science and Technology. And so that's how we were able to make this pitch, right? So, but if you depend on federal money, I think we can all see now what happens when the political wind blows the other way and they rip that rug out.
Yeah.
Okay. I think viscerally, we all know that right now. So we knew that we couldn't, if we were going to be sustained, we could not depend on federal money. And that's the reason why we expand into a state with an agreement that once we reach a certain footprint and you're starting to roll people off the assembly line here, it's got to go to state funding. And so we have a budget model, and you actually know Tricia Lowe, right?
Yeah.
Right. So she built our budget model. So we know exactly what to charge a state for this. So they know all that up front. And frankly, so like we have a line item in Washington state budgets, $300,000. That's fuzz. I mean, that's statistical nothing on their budget.
Yeah, that's a round off error from some of these other initiatives.
But we still had to go testify to the state legislature because they were canceling everything. So we had students testify and local governments and people from universities, and they go, okay, yeah, we're going to keep this. So, it's iffy. So one of the challenges, it's making it sustainable. When you built something with grant money and you turn it into a nonprofit, right? We don't make money. I'm a volunteer. Steve's a volunteer. Vince Ward, he's a volunteer. We have 2 paid employees and interns, and that's what we spend our money on, right? And eventually it's going to get better. But if you want to make something successful, you must persist. You just can't give up. You got a great idea. This is the best thing. You all realize this is the best thing, and you take a bunch of body blows and you keep going.
Pretty good metaphor for life there. But yeah. Another question came up in chat. Is it only available for 4-year universities, or is it open for 2-year colleges as well?
There's a lot of 2-year colleges that are doing it now. So, right, like Green River, Highline, Edmonds, Whatcom.
Excellent.
Right. There's also universities. So again, it depends on what kind of cyber program they are teaching and how they want to embed this into their, structure for how they teach cyber. And there's a few ways to do that we discussed.
Excellent. Well, with just a few minutes left here, I think you mentioned you had a story about Agora, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to share that.
Oh, I got a lot of stories about Agora, dude.
Okay, how about a story you can share?
Okay, let me think. Okay, so the Agora. So this is an interesting thing, and I don't know if you know this. Do you know who was the CISO of the city of Seattle before me?
No.
Kirk Bailey.
Was he really?
Yep.
No kidding. Was this before Bailey, he went to UW?
Before he went to UW. So Kirk Bailey was the CISO for University of Washington, and he had this meeting, the Agora, right? Agora is Greek for meeting place. And the meeting was really predicated on networking with your peers. Yes, there were a few talks, but there was a whole lot of coffee breaks and scones and like donuts and munchies and stuff like that. And it was really, the point was, meet the people you're going to know that you're going to need to depend on or work with if the stuff hits the fan. Okay. And so they were great meetings. And the way that they were structured is you had to be vetted in. Your name had to be on the list at the door, because if you weren't getting in. Vendors were not allowed to do any sales stuff at all, right? Right. And there was a couple of times I warned them, right? When I gave talks out there, I said, listen, if you call me later and you say, hey, I can help you with that thing that you talked about, you're getting body slammed. Right. We made it like really clear to the vendors, right? We wouldn't take vendor money to support things, nothing like that. So the way that this thing was structured was, the first thing, Kirk Bailey would tell a story. That's what he called it. He'd tell a story. Not give a talk. He'd tell a story. And the story, and then there was a couple of other like subject matter experts that would talk about, here's an incident we responded to, and here's a threat group we need to know about. But Kirk would tell the story, and that's the way it got kicked off. And he was really super good at this. And the stories all revolved around August 15th. Okay. And I heard later, but I've never confirmed that's Kirk's birthday. I don't know this for sure. Yeah.
All this
That's why it was
time?
August 15th. Nobody knew, right? Why is he talking about August 15th all the time? And he would get the whole crowd. Like 400 people would show up for this thing. They would fly in from DC. They would come down from Canada. They were from everywhere, right? And he would get everybody to go, August 15th. So, but the very first one he told, and the stories were all about how to do bad data analysis, right? How to come up with the wrong conclusion with a bunch of data you have in front of you. And it was instructive, right? So the first story he told was about the day that Elvis Presley died and how he was having a great day and he was about to get married to this woman and he went to a dentist. Okay. And we all know that when you have fillings in your teeth, possibility of picking up radio signals, right? Right? This is like a real thing.
Rumor has it.
That same day, the people who look out into space and are trying to find signals that mean something about there may be life out there trying to communicate with us. Okay.
Is this
that was the day
or like actual SETI?
No, it was pre-SETI.
Okay.
But they came up with the WOW signal. Okay. And it's called that.
Yeah.
Remember? Right?
Yep.
It's called that because the researcher who found this thing, he wrote on the graph, he goes, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing leads to another. Kirk is going through this story. All right. Let's make the story short. Kirk Bailey proved that on August 15th, 1977, aliens killed Elvis. Okay. Right. This is no joke. No joke. I mean, and we were like totally ready to believe this, man. It was so convincing, right? But the whole thing was about how to assimilate a bunch of data and do bad analysis with it and come up with a completely the wrong conclusion. So that's I'll tell you one other. This wasn't Agora, but this was a talk I gave at UW. And hopefully this offends somebody here. And so I was giving a talk on disinformation. And I was talking about this researcher who's like very good at, finding disinformation online and being able to counter that and stuff like that. And as I'm talking, and I don't know what came over me. And Kirk later, he told me he loved this. I said, look, I'm going to go off script here. And this will tell you about when this happened. I said, if you read on Facebook that Hillary Clinton runs a child prostitution ring out of a non-existent basement in a pizzeria in Boston, your intelligence is in question. And 2 people left the room immediately, right? Because, hey, do not pull punches. Do not pull punches, right?
I think I remember that meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you were there.
So the spirit of Agora lives on. It
does.
I love it. The goals of August 15th we will carry forward with our investigative tactics and methodologies here. So with that, I'll say, Mr. Mike Hamilton, thank you very much for your time here today. Anything you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, there is one thing I will leave your audience with because I feel very strongly about this. So we're having our asses handed to us by criminals, nation states, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And if there's one thing you can do to try and tamp that down, it's this. You make one policy change. All personal use will be on a personal device. I don't care where you work. It's a hospital, it's a bank, a government. I don't care. Facebook lives here. Gmail lives here. Doesn't live on your work computer. And I know this because when I was at the city, we made a lot of measurements, and we know that 40% of the compromises were due to the use of personal email, right? So here's Outlook. It's all cleaned up. Pay a lot of money. No bad attachments. No bad links.
A lot of
right
filtering.
Right next to it is a web browser opened to Bubba's email service with no controls at all. Okay. What good did it do to spend that money? None. All right. So we got to quit doing this. The other thing is, at a global level, we need to start ostracizing countries that do bad stuff, right? Stop carrying routing information for North Korea. Just stop it. Just make it so that they can't get here. Wow, how much of a decision is there right? So I'm frustrated as hell. You can tell why they don't let me make government policy anymore, right? But that's what I'm going to leave you with.
All right. I like it. Actionable guidance and some fun stories to boot. So with that, we will say thank you very much, Mr. Hamilton, and we will see you again soon, hopefully.
All right. Punching out.
And thank you to Mike Hamilton. Next up, we'll be joined by Mike Melanson for our segment on vulnerabilities in the news. Because if it's vulnerable and we're talking about it, it's time for Vulnerable. And welcome to our first edition of Vulnerable. We are joined today by Mike Melanson. Mike, for our new audience, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, John Luke. I'm Michael Melanson, and I've worked in various aspects of the cybersecurity field over the past 7 to 8 years. Prior to this, I was a Chief Warrant Officer in the United States Coast Guard, retired from that, and then joined the world of cybersecurity. And within that world, I've worked as a cybersecurity analyst in a security operations center, so staring at network traffic, network alerts, that type of thing. I've worked hands-on as a keyboard analyst in a SOC. I've also worked as a SOC manager. So other than that, I've done incident response, responding to incidents ranging from ransomware to business email compromise. And I've done a lot of work in the past couple of years writing incident response plans and reporting on cybersecurity and business continuity tabletop exercises.
Fantastic. So you know a little of what you speak. And on that note, tell us what you got for us today here. What are some vulnerabilities that you've seen flying around that you think people at home and at the office need to know about?
Well, specifically at the office is kind of what we're looking at. The most concerning, one of the most concerning vulnerabilities I've seen in the past week and a half is the one affecting the SonicWall SSLVPN. There's been some chatter among threat researchers regarding a vulnerability within that, which appears to be 0 day. And I mean 0 day in the actual sense that they don't know, SonicWall can't identify yet exactly what is the cause of the vulnerability.
Okay, quick timeout. Since we recorded this interview, more reporting has come out, including an update from SonicWall, who advised that these are not new vulnerabilities being exploited, they're old vulnerabilities that have already been patched. Now, the implication there is that the orgs that have fallen victim to this round of attacks may have been running unpatched or out-of-date devices. The interesting part is that regardless of whether they're new vulnerabilities or old vulnerabilities in old firmware, the recommendations to mitigate it are still the same. So let's get back to the interview and hear what Mike recommends for SonicWall owners.
So the concern is if you can't identify it, there's got to be other mitigations, other types of controls, compensating controls that you put in front of that until they can actually develop a patch. SonicWall can actually develop a patch for it.
So they know the vulnerability is there, they know it's being actively exploited, but they don't know where in the code the problem is, so they haven't been able to release a patch yet. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's actually a little bit of news on that as well, which I'll get into in just a little bit. But I think the initial mitigation steps are what's useful, because these mitigation steps are always useful. The initial mitigation steps that are being suggested is either disable the SonicWall VPN, which may or may not be feasible depending upon your enterprise, right? So alternatively, locking it down with a minimal allow list using IPs that are allowed, specific IPs, making sure that to audit the service accounts that you're using and remove those unneeded accounts. If you have a SonicWall service account, an LDAP service account, understand, do these need to be domain admins? And, so limiting those types of service accounts that are being used, limiting the types of accounts that are actually on the SonicWall device itself, making sure that the accounts that are on there are needed. And it's not just, well, I looked at it last month. It's a constant process of looking at them, logging when new accounts are being made, making sure that they're authorized, making sure they're not overprivileged, making sure there's no default accounts on there, because that's what a threat actor is going to try to do. Is they're going to try to either get access through an account and escalate privileges to allow themselves to do what they want, or make a account that you're just not thinking about, that you're not aware of, and using that to access your network, and then to move around, because what's happening is threat actors are getting access through the SonicWall SSLVPN, and then they're pivoting over into domain controllers. And then once that's done, that's all she wrote.
Yeah. So is the attack going after the firewall? Like, is it trying to bring down the firewall for their own purposes, or is the attack being used as a way of getting into the firewall, as a way of then pivoting further inside of the network?
It's initial access. It's an initial access method, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do we know what the worst case scenario is for the SonicWall devices themselves? Let's say my device is compromised, or I've been popped in this way. What does that mean for me and my organization?
Well, it means that you need to be looking around for lateral movement, privilege escalation, and signs of threat actors exfiltrating data, that kind of thing. Because once they're in, that's kind of it. Yeah. And so what I would suggest, there's a couple. Arctic Wolf released a lot of detail on this attack. Huntress, which is a company, I have no affiliation with them, but they're near and dear to my heart because they're so accessible. They're so accessible to the layperson and people that aren't part of their organization. They do a lot. If you go on YouTube, they got a lot of content on there, which is useful to any aspiring cybersecurity individual. So just go there, check out Huntress, and see what they have for you. But Huntress has a great deal of content regarding this particular threat, including indicators of compromise. They have IPs that are being used for command and control. They have discovered ransomware executables. So with a SHA-256 hash, which can be used both as a detection method and as a blocking method in an isolation. Okay. So and they have other indicators of interest that would be useful to somebody that's looking to mitigate this.
Yeah. All right. That's terrific. So for, let's say, non-technical business owners, let's say, I'm a business executive, but I'm not an IT guy. It sounds like the takeaway actions here are going to be, make sure your technical folks are looking at this. If you have a SonicWall device or a SonicWall firewall in your environment, they got to be checking to make sure that it's patched, but then they've also got to be looking for signs of compromise, looking to see if there's suspicious log events, if those IOCs, the indicators of compromise, are turning up in their network, like with those file hashes or IP addresses. Are there any other signatures on the firewall itself to be looking out for?
Not on the firewall itself, because the firewall is being used for initial access. And then once they're in, they're maintaining that access into your network, to your domain controllers, or to another critical asset that they're using to spread throughout the rest of your network and gain access to the assets within there.
So if I've got a compromised firewall, that means that probably my network is compromised too.
I can see that they're not going to wait around too long, because SonicWall is all over this. Other researchers are all over this. It won't be too long before the jig is up, right? So they gotta do what they're gonna do, and So I would say if you've detected any of these indicators of compromise within your network or network connections to the public network, with an IP that is listed as an indicator of compromise, I don't want to scare people, but the clock is ticking. So
time to jump on a due diligence investigation and make sure that you know that you don't actually have bad guys running around inside your environment.
exactly.
All right. Well, that's all very comfort inducing. What else you got for us today?
Well, I will go a little bit further and just say that SonicWall, not more than probably a couple hours ago, released an update to this particular vulnerability. And let me just find it right here. And I will not try to put it into my own words. I will just tell you what they say. So SonicWall says in reference to this SSLVPN recent threat activity that they now have high confidence that it's not connected to a zero-day vulnerability. Instead, there is significant correlation with threat activity related to CVE 2024-40766, which was previously disclosed and documented in a public advisory.
So they're saying this isn't new, it's an old bug, you just need to patch your stuff.
Well, here is where it gets funky. So they're finding, they're finding many of the incidents relate to migrations from Gen 6 to Gen 7 firewalls, where local user passwords were carried over during the migration and not reset. Resetting passwords, they remind us, was a critical step that they outlined in their original advisory. So if you skip that step, based on this release, now I take it all with a grain of salt. I want to see how this plays out. This is only a couple hours old.
Yeah.
But if you skip this step of resetting passwords, you may have left the door cracked.
Okay. That's an interesting, not an indicator, like that's not something I would go and search for, but that may be something which tells me whether or not I've got a problem.
Yeah, okay. Exactly.
All right. Any other vulnerabilities we want to share for our listeners and viewers at home?
I think that's the big one. That's the big one I wanted to get out there because it's prevalent right now. A lot of attention on it.
And SonicWall is not a small technology distributor. You know, I mean, they're very popular, especially in the mid-size marketplace with small and mid-sized businesses. They're used in a lot of organizations as small remote office firewalls or small traveler firewalls for remote employees. So even if you're mostly like a Cisco shop or a Palo Alto shop in your data centers, there's a lot of environments that may still have SonicWall devices floating around that are connected to the internet and which may be set up for remote management, which is the trouble condition, which is what could lead to the attack occurring here. So, all right.
Yeah.
Stuff for people to check.
Yeah, and what we can do is pass along a couple of links to the research so people have those readily accessible.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of interesting details within this, but I can't get into them right now. It would take too long, and people would be like, "What is he talking about?"
We'll save that for a deep dive conversation. But yeah, we'll make sure that the links go up with the video here. You bet.
Perfect.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time, my friend.
All right.
And that wraps up our first episode. A special thank you to our guests, Mike Hamilton and Mike Melanson, for joining us on our inaugural production. And thank you to the PNW Cyber Collective members who were in our audience during the interviews. And of course, thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. If you haven't yet, remember to go to pnwcybercollective.com and sign up. And of course, like this video and subscribe to this channel. So stay tuned and stay subscribed, because we'll see you in September at the same cyber time on this same cyber station. And until then, be well, and make sure your firewalls are patched, folks.